In this episode, I talk about the magical stuff, those synchronous, rare moments when the stars align, and how maybe they are much more ordinary in the best way possible. So here we go, episode 225, The Extraordinary Ordinary. Hi, I'm Karen Rohlf, and welcome to Horse Training in Harmony. This podcast is about you making progress with your horse in a way that you both can love. It's about learning how to move and be in harmony. Because yes, you really can develop a horse to be both athletic and happy. When we show up as our best selves for our horses will show up for us. So let's get started. I set the intention for my property to be a temenos. I've called my property Temenos Fields, and the name of my company is Temenos Fields. And the definition of the temenos is a space without limits, a sacred circle where special rules apply and magical events are free to occur. And so obviously I'm welcoming magical events and all kinds of cool stuff. And I feel like all kinds of cool stuff does happen around here. And the other day I shared a story on Facebook from one day that was just one of those days that was like particularly like, really? This is happening again? And so I thought I'd talk about it here on this podcast, and I can expand a little more on it too. So what happened was, in the morning, I often do a little meditation, and upstairs there's this little balcony thing on the second floor, and that's where I sit and meditate. And a couple times when I was meditating, a bird would sit on my head because this is in the spring. It was over the winter, and I would have like a big hoodie on with the hood pulled up, and sometimes a blanket over my head. And there one day I could hear like the flutter of a bird, and then it landed on my head, but I just reflexively flinched. Maybe some of you remember the story I told about the spider. Like I'm just a little twitchy with things that I don't know what they are landing on my head. Anyway, so he landed on my head, and I like flinched, and he flew off. And then a few days later, it landed on my head again, and I flinched, and it flew off. And I told myself, like, if the bird lands on my head, don't flinch. I told myself this. And then later in that same sitting, something landed on my head again, and again I flinched. So I'm going to really work on my lightning fast reflexes. Anyway, I put a bird feeder up there because I thought, all right, let's just encourage birds to come around here, because I really think it's pretty cool that this little wren sitting up. I'm assuming it's a wren because I see the wrens around there, and they're pretty bold little birds. Anyway, so I don't care what bird it is. I would love a bird to feel welcome to sit on my head, and I would love to not flinch when they do it. Anyway, so there's a bird feeder up there. And so the other morning, I was sitting and I just finished the meditation. I looked up and I saw the bird feeder, and I kind of wondered, it was hard to see through to see how much bird seed was still in there. And I had this thought, and I said to myself, I wonder if the birds have found the bird feeder yet. And then a split second later, this chickadee flew onto it, looked over its shoulder at me, and chirped. And then flew off. I'm like, all right, well, that answered that question. Got it. Thank you, little chickadee. And so that just put a big smile on my face, and went down to the barn. And this day at the barn, I kind of broke my normal routine. So normally I kind of cycle through horses. I bring one in, I play with it, and then, just cycle through them. And in the mornings, all the horses are kind of free in the main area, and they can come in and out of the barn, as they like. But mostly they, hang out grazing or doing whatever, and then sometimes they'll come through. And they kind of usually have a little anticipation of what order they're going to go in. But today I did not do that. I had just wanted them all. I just felt like doing spa day. So everybody was going to have their turn in the wash stall, and I was going to scrub what needed to be scrubbed and go over with a fine tooth comb and, put conditioner in their manes and, just little stuff like that. Body work, Beamer, just all that little stuff. And I just decided to take the whole morning to do that with every horse. So I guess the point is it wasn't a normal routine. And so everyone was loose. And I had Natia in there, and I was kind of scrubbing her mane and putting, different things on her little wounds and stuff like that. And as I'm washing Natia's mane, I thought, I think I'll do Cora next. And 30 seconds later, clip, clop, here comes Cora into the barn. And I just giggled to myself and was like, well, thanks, Cora. Like, that was perfect. And so finished with Natia. Cora, she loves spa day. So anyway, so now I've got Cora washing her tail, doing her mane. And then I was just doing some sort of light touch body work with Cora. And at this point, it's getting close to 10. And that's the time limit for when Solana and Natia have to come off the grass. So, I've got I'm doing Cora. I didn't want to really interrupt my body work. I noticed it was 10. And I was thinking that when I had a moment to take a break, I should text Becky and just make sure she could round up Solana and get her in off the grass. Literally 10 seconds later, I see Solana at the water that we have at the end of the barn aisle. She had marched herself up, took a little drink. I just looked at her and was like, thanks, Solana. And then she came in and hung out in the barn. She actually went into the stall that was open and took a nap. So thanks, Solana. Now later, I was doing Solana, and I had done the other boys, Atomic and Ovation and Hot Shot. And I was finishing up Solana, and I was thinking, I was kind of getting near time that I usually kind of wrap it up. But I was thinking, I've done all the other geldings sheaths. Is that too much information? Anyway, and I thought, I really ought to do Teo's also. But Teo was the only one who kind of was hanging out further away. And he had been in the pasture all morning. Kind of everybody else had come up, and he was out in the pasture at the far end of the pasture. So I was kind of feeling a little bit like, well, if he's close by, then I'll just do him and get his sheath done pretty quick. But if he's at the far end, I'll leave him for tomorrow. So I look around the corner, and he was standing at the gate. So I thought, all right, I should text Becky, my assistant, to go get him now while he was up close. I wasn't sure where Becky was. So I sent Becky a text. I said, hey, can you bring Teo in? And at the exact moment that I hit send, I heard the feed room door open on the other side of the barn. It opened, it closed, and then I see Becky heading towards Teo. And I'm like, that was too fast. So I looked at my phone, and the message was not marked as read. It was just marked as delivered. So Becky went, got Teo, and then brought him up to the barn. And I said, did you see my text? And she was kind of apologetic. She was like patting her pockets. It's like, oh no, I'm sorry. I don't have my phone on me right now. But I let her know that was okay. I was just wondering. And I showed her the text that I had sent, and we laughed about how clearly Becky had, quote, gotten the message. Anyway, I think actually that happens a lot with Becky. I think she's a little special that way anyway. She's very connected. Anyway, so that was all within just a few hours one morning. And I don't know what I did to be that connected to the collective consciousness of the Temenos that day, but I decided I was going to keep doing it, whatever it was. So that's a story I told on Facebook. And I guess to be clear, I'm not telling this story to make, you think that I think I'm so special, right? Or that I have any special powers, or I've been chosen or worthy in any way to have these moments. Because I know that many of you are listening to this going, oh yeah, that happens to me, or that just happened to me, right? So I actually, as special as these moments are, I don't think that these moments actually mean anything, right? I definitely don't know like the mechanism for them. And I'm not sure I care what the mechanism is, because I think trying to figure out the mechanism is the kind of thinking that actually becomes a barrier to it happening. The thing I really want to talk about this about is because I actually think that these moments are the opposite of special. I think these moments are available to absolutely everyone all the time for free. I mean, not that we have to pay, but like they're just here for us. They're here for us. And, days or moments like this really can feel so special. I mean, I got excited. It's like you can't help but like giggle and feel like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Like it can feel like we're tapping into something else, or, that feeling like, oh, the stars aligned, for this rare moment. But if we think of it as like we're tapping into some special place, kind of implied in there is that we're visiting. Like we can't stay. We tap in and then we tap back out to get on with normal life. And if we think of it as like the stars aligned and the magic happens, it kind of implies that, they're going to get it back out of alignment, right? Because the planets are always moving. So something comes into place, the magic happens, and then it moves on and it stops happening. Or we might think that we did something special to deserve it, right? Oh, I really, I meditated the right number of hours and then this happens, right? Or that there was an action that we took that was somehow worthy, and this is our reward. And sort of implied in there is that we have to then keep working and keep earning it. That there's something right we need to do to be able to achieve this experience. And my current belief, because, it's all a guess, is that this state that we call magical is actually the default state of life. I mean, it's here. It's available all the time. And it's not only available, but it just simply is. And the trouble is that a lifetime of being a human and thinking and being told how to think and adding all of the protective layers and being told that things like this aren't really happening, or being told that it's just coincidence, and being all the judgments and all the doubts and all the defenses and all the layers and all the protection that we've added onto ourselves as humans is actually what's separating us from it. Sometimes it feels like I'm trying to become part of the ocean, right? I'm a drop of water and I'm in the ocean, and I want to feel like I'm the ocean. And then I head out, there I go marching down to the beach, but I got a wetsuit, I got my water wings, I got an inflatable floaty thing, I got my mask, I got my snorkel. So like I can stick my legs and arms in the ocean, I can peek in, but it's like I'm not really going in. And I think so much of the time we humans are kind of walking around in the air in the equivalent of like wearing water wings and a floaty and a wetsuit and a snorkel and a mask and all these things that are putting us in between, they're getting in between us and really, really dropping in. And then I guess it feels like some days, for some reason, I don't have all that extra stuff on me. And I get to immerse just a little more in all the cool stuff that's happening all the time. And so that's the work. The work is not to find the magic. It's right there. You don't have to look. It's right there. But the work is to remove the stuff that's in the way. Easy peasy. No, it's not easy. That is the work, and it can be hard, but it's not complicated. That's what I tell myself. It's not complicated, except that we make it so. Or I'll speak for myself, except that I make it so. So many of you know that Marianne Williamson's famous quote that says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Because if it was true that we're powerful beyond measure, then there's kind of no excuse anymore, right? And if it was true that synchronous harmonizing with the energy of the universe was possible at any time for anyone, then if we're not experiencing it, something must be wrong with us. And I think people do this with horses too, right? Our biggest fear is that there's nothing wrong with our horse, because then it would mean that we just can't ride it or get along with them. So it's challenging for humans to embrace this kind of possibility. It's also hard to imagine. It feels a little like imagination, except if you notice the times that it does happen and you don't dismiss it. And maybe that's why I'm sharing this so much and I want to talk about it, because it's so easy to go, oh, that was just a day, or isn't that cute? Right? And I want to be like, hey, I see that. I feel it. Yes, yes, yes. More, please. I'm not going to dismiss it. And imagine if these moments of synchronicity are always available. We don't have to become anything. We don't have to create anything. You don't have to go achieve something or prove something. You don't have to become a yogi master. You don't have to meditate for 12 hours a day, unless that is precisely the tool that you need to take the layers off of this, the layers of the stuff of life off of you. I mean, maybe you've realized that the best tool for you personally is fill in the blank. And then because of the result of that tool, now you feel free and unencumbered. You take the water wings and the wetsuit off, and now you're in the ocean. But it's not the ego goal of, oh, well, I'm a yogi master, and then that makes me feel good about myself. Sometimes what you need to take off the layers of the stuff of life is just sleep, like enough sleep, or eating what your body needs. And I don't know, for me, it feels really different. Like I'm all for hard work. Like I don't have any problem with that, but it feels really different to do work to uncover something that you know is there, compared to working to hopefully one day be good enough to be in the right place at the right time to feel something that's given to you. Maybe. You hope. So if you really want to have more of these kind of synchronous moments, the work to do is to get out of your own way so that you can be open and present. The tricky part is to do the work to be open, but then relax into the possibilities from there. So you can't make stuff happen, and you definitely can't control it, but you can notice and say yes when it does happen. And so we can see the similarities to horsemanship, right? So from a horsemanship standpoint, it's similar. It's a combination of things going on. It's a play between my focus and freedom and intention. It's choreography and improvisation. So in the little story that I told with my horses cycling through, like that couldn't have happened if my horses weren't free to move about in that way. I mean, and there's all kinds of possible ways to have synchronous moments. But in this story that I gave, that couldn't have happened. They could never have had that opportunity or possibility to come up exactly in those moments if they weren't free to do so. So there needs to be a certain amount of freedom allowed. And, intention, to have an intention is different than having a focus, right? So having a focus is saying, I want this one thing. Intention is more about being clear about the direction you want to go, the sort of thing that you'd like to have happen, even the destination you might like to end up with, but with intention, you're sort of open to how it happens, right? So in quantum physics, like all possibilities exist until you focus on just one. So focus is obviously helpful in life, but if you're too focused, then you eliminate other possibilities. So if I had focused on, these horses need to be here and managed it so that they all ended up here at the right time, again, they wouldn't have had that freedom. So focus can lead to micromanaging. It would have been much more efficient. That was in air quotes. You might think it's more efficient if I had made a plan and told my assistant what order I wanted to do the horses in, or tell her just keep, hey, check in with me and keep bringing me another horse. Like that's the kind of focus, let's make a plan. That would be very efficient and stuff would happen. And then maybe other magical things would happen. But for this moment, like what would have stopped that moment from happening? And it could have been if I was too focused instead of allowing the possibilities and having that intention. The intention allows for the movement. So I'm supposing, like I said, I don't know how the mechanism really works, but what I did was, I had an intention out there, and apparently I was out of my own way, right? I had the intention of knowing whether or not birds were in the feeder. I'd like to know the answer to this question. I had the intention of at some point soon washing Cora's mane. I didn't put the intention out there that I would put Nitty away, go get Cora's halter, walk out to where she's grazing, lead her back, etc., etc. I didn't really think about how. I just this is the next thing I'm picturing. And, maybe another way to look at this is that it was Cora's intention that I was feeling, right? So maybe Cora was walking up. Like if you could zoom out and see the picture from above, maybe Cora was like, hey, I think I'm going to come in the barn, hang out with Karen. And I picked up on that. So that could be happening. Again, I don't need to know the mechanism. I kind of don't want to know the mechanism. I don't think it serves me to know the mechanism. And I know for me personally, if I open up that part of my brain, it just starts thinking too much and it gets in the way. All I want to do is be like, whoa, that was cool. And then talk about it on my podcast. Anyway, but you guys, I'm sure all of you know this feeling, right? Have any of you, thought about someone that you haven't thought about in a while, and then they call you or they email you? Did you make that happen, or were you picking up on the energy of that other person thinking of calling you? This happens with stuff I've ordered. Sometimes I order something from a company, and then it takes a while, and then, I'm being patient. And then one day I'm like, I just, that popped in my mind. I'm going to check the tracking, and I'll go in my email, and then I'll check the tracking, and then it says delivered just now. Right? I love that. I'm always wondering, like, did some part of me knew, because I am the ocean, and I knew that it was delivered. There was the possibility that I knew it was delivered. I just didn't know I knew. And so that's, again, why sometimes not thinking opens up just the knowing. And so these kind of synchronous moments in life, I mean, what are we trying to do with horses, right? We're trying to be synchronous with our horses, I think. So with riding, it's a little about leading the movement, and it's a lot about getting out of the way. And those really great moments with horses don't feel like control. They don't feel like pushing. They don't feel like forcing. They don't always feel like figuring it all out. I mean, sometimes we have to do some of that to get something to happen. But the really magical moments feel synchronous. It feels like, whoa, I just thought it and it happened. And this is, I think, why I think it's important to talk about this stuff, even on a horse training podcast, right? It's relationship, it's energy. We know it is. It's not just technique. So horses and life do require some choreography. There's some steps we need to know, and that we need to rehearse, and we need to learn them and break them down into small pieces. But it really becomes a dance when we can improvise and go with the flow of the moment. And I guess the game is, when do you do how much of which? I think having really connected, synchronized, I don't know what you want to call it, moments like this require a real humbleness. You can't make it happen. Humbleness and openness. So I know I can't make birds land on the bird feeder. It's not about superpowers for me. I can't let my ego get all up in it, right? And think that I'm special because moments like this happen. Because I think thinking that makes it happen less. So what do we do with this possibility? It's about knowing yourself and then forgetting. A simple yet hard thing to do. It's about putting an intention out there and then letting it go. Playing between choreography and improvisation. It's between waiting for my horse or life to do everything I want and controlling every movement. It's about riding the waves and allowing myself to be harmonized with. I'm so excited and curious, and I hope you are too. I can't wait for tomorrow. I wonder what's going to happen next.